Welcome to episode 36 of the Speed Secrets podcast. Today's episode is another one recorded on site at the Trois Rivieres IMSA Prototype Challenge race, where I'm talking to Kenton Koch. If you don't know Kenton, you should. He's one of the best up-and-coming sports car drivers in the country, if not the world. And we have this fantastic conversation about car control skills, what they are and how to develop them. Kenton's insights are very cool, so listen up.
Welcome to the Speed Secrets podcast. Join Ross Bentley and guests, drivers, instructors and coaches, engineers, officials, and others for conversations about high performance and race driving. Listen for tips and advice, thought-provoking ideas, and inspiration to take your own driving to the next level. Green, green, green!
So I'm here at Trois Rivieres with Kenton Koch and sitting in the back of the trailer after the first race. Not bad.
Yeah.
You happy with that?
Oh, of course. I mean, anytime you get to win a race by 20 or something, 20 odd seconds or whatever it was, it's never bad. That's for sure.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, it was an interesting race because the race started on, it was wet.
Yeah.
You started on slicks, everybody, but
I was on.
Or
rains.
You were on rains, sorry.
Yeah.
And everybody started on rains. My guy, we pitted after the first lap and went back on slicks, and it almost proved to be a really good call, but you managed the rain tires really, really well. So
yeah, I mean, it was. I tell people this that have been asking me. It's like, oh, how fun was it? I was like, well, first of all, it was a blast. Because it was back to when I ran in Skip Barber. It felt back to like when on the Formula cars with the road tires and whatnot. You always have to slide the car around the corner to get it pointed in the right direction past the apex to be able to get back to power. And it was the same thing in this thing. I was like, oh, it feels like going back to the Skippy days, but I'm in a really expensive prototype with rain tires, and I'm driving it like a Skippy car. It's fun.
On a street circuit lined with concrete walls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was a good time, that's for sure.
Yeah. One of the things that I think everybody's been impressed with you in your career as you've moved into, you've been doing this for how many years now?
14 years from when I was 8 years old.
Okay.
So 23, just turned 23.
And as you've got into cars, I mean, you continue to surprise people. And I think the thing that certainly surprised me is your car control. I mean, where does that car control come from? Were you born with that? Is it something that you deliberately work on? Where did that come from?
Well, when I was 3 years old, my parents got me a big wheel. Those things. It's a big plastic wheel in the front, and plastic wheels in the rear. And we had a slight decline on our driveway that went straight into the garage. My parents hated me because I always destroyed the garage door coming down the driveway on my big wheel, sliding the thing into the garage. And I eventually got good enough to where there was a little hallway or a little alley right by the fence that splits the neighbors and the garage, and it was just as wide as the trike was. And I would flick the thing one way and then flick it the other way when I was 4 years old, and go right between the alleyway there. And I like to say that's where it comes from, but as a kid just growing up, always interested in anything with wheels on it. I'd tore through anything with wheels when I was before go-karts. It was the big wheels, it was the electric power wheels and things like that. I went through those things like they were candy, because I always just burnt the front wheel off, the rear wheels off once I got good. And then, when I went into go-karts, it was kind of, when I turned 6, there was an auto show, the LA Auto Show. Most people know about it. And they've got a little import section down below, and they had a go-kart down there. And, my dad took me to the LA Auto Show just because we all kind of like cars. And saw a go-kart there, and I was like, man, I want to do that. I was 6 years old. And they told me I had to be 8 years old to be able to drive, and I'll tell you what, that was the longest 2 years of my life.
Right.
Yeah, so the day I turned 8, I was like, yeah, let's get a go-kart. So, and then kind of was all go from there on. And my mom was always scared initially, and she then eventually saw that, oh, he's got it under control, and she stopped getting nervous. So I guess the car control aspect, I like to say, comes from big wheels, so thanks to Toys R Us.
Yeah. You should have them as a sponsor. There you go. Yeah. The idea of this podcast is, I like to talk about things that, in a way that somebody listening to this can take that away and go, you know what, I'm going to work on that when next time I'm in a car. And I think the car control thing is an interesting topic because it's how much of it is the skill and how much of it is the comfort level, because you always look comfortable sliding a car, and I see other drivers who they can slide a car but they don't look comfortable doing it.
Well, I think, touching on that point then, I think that this podcast is great for that. And it's obviously you've created a name for yourself and a great business. And I think, what you've done and provided for people is great. But, the car control aspect, I think everyone kind of has a different way of going about it. But for me, I mean, you can always work on car control. It's never something that is, something that's perfect, so you're always developing your skill, no matter how good you are.
Right.
Joey Hand is still getting better. Michael Schumacher was always still getting better.
Right.
Everyone's still getting better, and there's no amount of perfect you can be. And if you're someone that's maybe not as perfect as you could be, you're always learning. But for myself, it was one thing that helped me coming from go-karts to cars. It was actually, go-karts are obviously very light, very nimble. You can flick them around, they're pretty easy to slide around. And anyone can really get in a go-kart and slide it and figure it out, within a couple days. But when you move up into cars, it's a lot more weight management that goes into sliding a car predictably, so you can catch the slide and control the slip angle as you're going through the corner. So when I went into cars, that was a big change for me. And from coming from go-karts, you always have quick hands.
Yeah.
So when I jumped into cars, for my first 3 day at Skip Barber at Mazda Raceway, coming into turn 2, you had to trail the thing all the way down into the apex and try to get the car rotated right in the middle. And for me, I always had quick hands to catch the slide, so I always killed the rotation and ended up pointing the car away from the second apex. And had a big old chunk of understeer trying to get back to the second apex and then coming off the corner. One thing that I was always told is be patient with your hands. It's if you're smooth with your feet and smooth with all your applications, the slower the car is going to rotate and slide, and that's how you're going to be able to predict what's going to happen. So once the car slides, let it get a little bit of slip angle, and then manage that slip angle. So it was always being smooth with your inputs to be able to manage rotation predictably. So if you have a poppy brake release or your brake application is like a dimmer switch, and you're increasing your brake pressure at the apex, and you then pop off the brake pedal, it's not going to be predictable. You have to do things by the book, smoothly, predictably, in order for yourself to be able to then come away with a rotation that's very predictable. And different cars are obviously different with how big that rotation is and whatnot, given the tire. But one thing that was always helping me was, if you do everything slowly and smoothly, the rotation is always going to happen smoothly, slowly, and predictably. And then you just get comfortable with letting the car slide. So you're slow with your input. So the second the car starts sliding, you just let it happen. And then you add as much input as you need to keep it from sliding.
So did you have to deliberately slow your hands down? I mean,
Yes.
As a coach, I can't tell you the number of carters that I've come on, slow those hands down.
Yes.
You've got two fans, so your hands are too fast. So
I had to let the car spin.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I had to let the car spin or get out of control in order for myself to be able to really figure that out. And then once the other thing that's very helpful is driving on road tires. Driving on road tires on a race car is awesome. And Skip Barber, you're obviously driving on road tires. And then when I moved into MX-5s from Formula cars and Skippy, when I saw that was a better trajectory from a scholarship standpoint, they also had road tires in their regional series.
Right.
And one of the coaches that I had, which is he was kind of just always around the track. He was one of the private coaches. I was good friends with him. And he was like, hey, just let the car drift. Go out on a practice and just slide the car around and get comfortable with slip angle.
Right.
And once I got comfortable with a lot of slip angle, these little bits of little slides and little bits of rotation were nothing. Because you just got so used to big slip angles that once you managed the little ones, it was no big deal.
So did you spin the car?
from jumping from Formula cars, obviously it doesn't have a lot of steering lock, so it was much easier to spin the Formula cars than the MX-5s. But at that point, I had kind of developed enough car control to keep it from spinning, because there's so much steering lock in an MX-5. You know, you could be like looking out the side of the window. Yeah. You know, so you manage the slide before it gets to that point, because it has so much steering lock.
Because, you know, I mean, there's that theory that, hey, the only way to find the limit is to go and drive over it.
Totally.
Like, you know, you got to go and spin the car a bunch, and you got to go and crash a bunch of cars. You know, one of the things I think that's, you know, made you successful in your career is you're bloody fast, but you don't crash cars.
No. Yeah, that's one thing we couldn't afford to crash cars.
Yeah, I actually think that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, no, my parents are, you know, upper middle class family, definitely not racing money. They were able to support me, you know, in Skip Barber, helping me with my expenses, but, you know, I wouldn't be here without the scholarship opportunities that I've had. And for me, that's always pushed me to be the best I possibly could, because I always wanted it so bad that the only opportunities I could have to move forward is to win. So I always drove myself to be the best I possibly could be, even if I did win a race. I was like, man, I sucked in that one corner or that time, or I wasn't consistent enough or whatever.
You know, just as you were saying that, I was thinking, I mean, years ago, I mean, I was doing way back when, you know, previous century, doing IndyCar stuff, and Jeff Andretti, he and I went through rookie orientation at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway at the same time. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I mean, everybody looks at Jeff Andretti and goes, man, if my name was Andretti, you know, I'd have rolling in money, I'd have all the support and everything. And, you know, I think he, you know, two things. I mean, one is, he had some financial support. Yeah. But there was a lot of people that wasted his time. Yeah. Because all he wanted to do was talk to an Andretti, because they wanted to really get to Mario, right? Yeah. So I think there was some of that. But I think, you know, being hungry is a good thing, right?
Yes. Yeah, work harder than anyone else.
Yeah. And, you know, the most talented, and I'm using air quotes here, like everybody can see that on a podcast, right? You know, but the most talented people I know work harder than everybody else. Yeah. Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah. It's funny how that works. Do the footwork.
Yeah. And, but, you know, I mean, I love talking about car control. Like, I just think it's so cool. But I think there's also, I mean, you get to a point where it's like there are drivers who the car steps out and they start sliding, they get that rotation, and they're not comfortable with that. Yeah. I mean, you just look like you're playing with it, you know. See you on the last lap, coming onto the front straight, and just like, I'm going to lay a little more rubber down here, you know, like, I just think that's pretty cool. Like, you just kind of get the car twisted around, and there are guys who are not comfortable with that. And, you know, I know some people go, well, Kenton, you were just born that way. And maybe you were. But I got to think that big wheel and the karting and the other stuff, and I think I have to think that the things that you've done that have helped you develop that. And I guess the other part is you just look like you're having fun out there all the time.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, no, I had a smile on my face that whole time, because it felt like the old days when you slide the car around, you know. And I always liked that, you know. If it was up to me, I would take all the wings off, put road tires on them, and take the grip away. Yeah, you know.
And I mean, you know, this is something that I've talked about in the podcast and other things I've done, and I think you brought it up a few minutes ago, is driving cars on street road tires.
Yes.
And, you know, I think too often gals who are, you know, going to doing track stuff, you know, they're too quick to put the sticky tires on there. And they don't get that.
Take it off.
Yeah. You want big slip angles.
Yeah, you want massive slip angles. Find the hardest tire you can possibly find and drive on that until you are having a good time sliding the car around. When the fear dissipates is when you get comfortable and confident, and that's when the car control really starts to come alive. And then once you get onto a slick, obviously that grip comes, and then you're like, crap, you're like not even close to the limit. So then you try to start figuring out where that limit is by just going a little bit faster. Yeah. And like the slip angles on those things, you know, they break away just as softly, you know, if you're doing things right. So it's they take the grip away.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that was the thing. I mean, obviously, you know, you've been really successful with the Mazda Ladder. Yeah. And you know, when you came from the MX-5 Cup Series and you moved into the IMSA Light Series, you know, I mean, you were quick from the first time, but I think that surprised a lot of people, because people went, oh, now you're driving a downforce car. And, you know, I mean, it's a question that I've had a lot, and I coach drivers on is, well, how do I make that transition from a car that doesn't have a lot of grip to a car that has downforce? And I mean, what was that like when you moved into a car that had some downforce now? And a lights car has that.
Yeah.
You drive faster, it gives you more grip, right?
Yeah. There's no leap of faith in any downforce car I've ever driven. So the people talk about, you go faster and it gives you more grip, and you can just go. It's like, if you go 80 miles an hour in this corner, you're spinning, and if you go 100 miles an hour, you're glued to the ground. There's never a leap of faith in any car, at least I've driven, that has had that. So for me, it's always about driving to the level of grip. Speed is always relevant to how much grip you have, and if you have a ton of grip, things aren't going to feel that fast. Like when you get into a shifter cart with super gummy Michelins, obviously things are going to feel like they're coming at you like a million miles an hour, and you're going to get like tunnel vision. But once you drive that for so long, you start to get used to the speed at which things come at you, and you start driving to that level of grip. And for me, in MX5 Cup and coming up, I think I was just brought up right from go-karts into cars, and always going through that Skip Barber model of no grip, slide the car, get used to that, and then once you finesse that and perfect it, then we throw slicks on you, and you end up thriving. So when I went from MX5 Cup to that IMSA Lights car, I think my car control was developed enough to be confident in myself to push to that limit, to where when I did step over the limit, I was able to catch it. Yeah. So it always goes back to the car control. Yeah. Like you talk about, and if you're confident in your car control, you can always drive any car to the level, to the limit, just because you're confident with yourself, and it also comes with confidence. Car control then comes confidence, and when you have that level of confidence, you can drive the car to the point of slip angle, and that's where you're going to get to the limit. You always got to overdrive the car in order to then back it off to get to that point.
Yeah, I agree 100% that you have to be able to drive the car to the limit. You got to be able to overdrive it a little bit, bring it back a little bit. But I think the big question that typically the drivers that aren't on a track every single weekend, the sport is difficult that way. It's an expensive thing, right?
Very difficult. Yeah.
But a lot of them are going, well, I go over the limit, and I'm way over the limit. Yeah, and the idea is, you mentioned it, like keep inching up on it, keep going just a little bit more, and I guess the other thing, and I'd like your opinion on this, is I see drivers who kind of get into a rut. They kind of get up to this perceived limit and go,
comfort.
That's it.
Yeah.
And what is it that makes you push beyond that? I mean, some of it is the hunger, right? The desire. How bad? I mean, as somebody that's making a career doing this, you don't get to move up unless you push beyond that, right?
Exactly.
There is no comfort. Stay in this rut because you're not going to go anywhere if you do that.
Well, they would like to say wife, kids, family, self-preservation, and things like that. But you can be safe in a race car and still drive at the limit. And like you say, inching up on that, and then stepping over it just a little bit. You go 10 1/4 tenths.
Yeah.
You don't go 15 tenths into a corner and you're like, I stepped over the limit, and you're in a wall.
Right.
It's you have to be able to be comfortable with yourself, and car control is big. But that threshold that people have trouble breaking through, and it's typically always, it helps to have a coach to break through that. Because you have to have, if there's the little guy in the back of your head's not pushing yourself to go, sometimes you need to have someone else to kick you in the butt, and sometimes that's necessary. And also, if that's not occurring and you reach this threshold, there's probably something else that you're lacking. It's not that you're like, I just need to go deeper, or do this, or release the pedal sooner. It's probably because you're lacking a fundamental in some other area. So it's probably because you're not confident in your car control. So if you increase your confidence in your car control and your ability, you're more likely going to be pushing yourself a little bit harder on the racetrack, because you'll be able to slide the car. But areas that help build confidence, low speed corners. Low speed corners, push yourself, and where there's no real downfall to
consequences
spinning off. The consequences are very low. Push yourself beyond what you think you're capable of, and then try it. But I think before that, you have to develop a confidence in yourself and your ability and the fundamentals to be able to do that. So, speed doesn't come with just going fast into a corner and braking at the 2 when and then releasing the pedal here, and being super methodical with it. Right. It doesn't come with driving point to point to point to point. You got to connect the dots.
Yeah.
And through fundamentals comes speed.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you've obviously been well trained in the fundamentals, the basics.
Yeah.
I've often said that the super trick stuff that the best drivers in the world use.
Yeah.
It's just they do the basics better than anybody else does.
Exactly.
And the other thing that I was thinking about there is, you have to go over the top and you have to go over the limit a little bit, and you're constantly making mistakes, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a perception that the best drivers in the world, Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, Jimmy Johnson, Scott Dixon, whoever your favorite driver is, they don't make mistakes. Well, they're constantly making mistakes. They're just really small ones. And, I watched you coming through turn 8 and get up a little further up on the curbing one lap, a little further than I think you wanted to.
Exactly.
Because the track was still pretty wet out there.
Yeah, charged in there a little too hard.
But you use your car control, you come out of that, and you learn, you know what, I can use a bit more there, or I got to bring it back a little bit, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So I think it is that ability to, part of it is that going 10 1/4 tenths or 10 1/2 tenths and not 15 tenths, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you always got to be just over it. And people think, you're just on the verge of crashing. It's like, no, I had the thing under control the whole time because I had the car control and confidence in myself. So,
right.
But like I said, you got to develop that. It's not going to come tomorrow or the next day.
So, have I seen on social media you autocross?
Yeah, I autocross a little bit here and there.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's good fun. It's a really good mental challenge. It's a really good mental challenge.
Talk about that,
So I own an RX-8, and I used to own a Miata. It was a supercharged Miata, and I like.
That's why you won the MX-5 Cup. It was supercharged. No, sorry.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's stories to be had there as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back, there was. I used to own a Miata, a supercharged Miata, and autocrossed it, and Speed Venture track days, similar to Chin events over here. I'm not sure if Speed Ventures is nationwide, but whatever, track day thing that they going off the parking lot.
Yeah,
I was like, this is fun. This is actually a really good mental exercise. So I ended up selling that, getting a car I could put into a class because the interior was stripped out of it, and it wouldn't be good in any class I'd put it in.
Right.
So obviously I want to win. So I that's what you do.
Yeah.
You want to be the best at anything you can get your hands on. So I got an RX-8 that was the cheapest thing I could find that was still good in a class. Yeah. Everyone's going to these 2016 MX-5s, and I was like, I'm going to go with a 2004 RX-8, and it ended up being pretty good. But yeah, the whole point behind it was, it's like, well, if I have some downtime, and I'm not driving something, this is a super cheap way of getting track time. It's $20, $30 or whatever it is to go out and get 5-6 runs on an autocross course, but to push yourself to the limit of in a very short amount of time, and visualizing and taking notes and doing your track walks, really make yourself a better driver, because you start to look at things a little bit differently when you're walking a track that you're going to only have 5 runs to perfect. Yeah. So it's like I say, it's a perfect mental exercise, because you have basically you have your 3 runs in a 15-minute period of time, and in between each run you have 2 minutes to set your pressures, cool the car off, whatever, and then you have to get going. So it's like boom, 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 boom. So you always have to have your head in the game of like, okay, you go out there the first time, you're like, here, and here, I screwed up, and then like the next time you go, you're like, okay, well, I need to fix here, and here, and you still like, you've only seen the truck once. It's like 1 lap. Right. So it's always really good to be able to push yourself to the limit in a very short amount of time, and that's where the going 10 1/2 tenths is crucial, because in autocross you kind of have to go 12 tenths on the first lap to be able to find where that limit is, because obviously there's cones out there, you're not going to hit anything. So you go 12 tenths to try to figure out where that limit is, and then you back it off from there. So like autocross is really good for pushing yourself mentally and your ability. You know, you're on a very small track, but you know you got to get it right, and it's a very good mental exercise to make sure you're thinking one corner at a time, and you're splitting your mind up into different sections as you're progressing through the track. You know, as you come up to each section, you have mental notes that you made in the previous run. Be like, oh, I need to brake 2 feet earlier here or whatever. You know, so I love it.
Yeah. So that explains why. So I've watched you an awful lot of the last few years, coaching drivers in the same series, hating you because you're winning all the time. So, but no, admiring you. But you know, one of the things that I love to watch is you on the first lap of any session.
Yeah.
You're up to speed quicker than anybody else, and you know, as a road racer, that's incredibly important, right? Mm-hmm. You know, in a practice session, you know, if it's a 30-minute practice session, you get up to speed much quicker. You read the car sooner. You're able to you might make 3 or 4 changes in a 30-minute session where somebody else might make 1 or 2 because you're up to speed and you're getting that. Yeah. And, you know, of course, the other thing is a lot of these events, somebody goes off, red flag the session, and everyone's sitting there going, I didn't get a good lap in. Well, you always seem to get a good lap in. And I think that's got to be part of it, is that you've got the fast program, right? You're fast right away.
Yeah.
And that, I got to think some of that comes from autocross.
It's kind of, it's the mental side really more than it is anything, and also going back to car control.
Yeah.
You know, and confidence in the car and knowing the car. And it's one of those things that you just have to go out and go. Like, you have to go out and push yourself the first couple laps and know where, you know. Sorry, let me start over. Actually, it all comes from doing your homework. You know,
right.
If you know where the limit is, or know where your braking points are, know where your minimum speeds are, and things like that, you know, you can automatically just attack the brake zones at the point you need to be, and then work on your release. Because sometimes if you don't do your homework, you're trying to figure out where the frick to brake,
right.
and you can't figure out your brake release yet. So you're like halfway through the brake zone, and you're like, oh, I'm off the brake pedal already. You know, but if you know where to brake, you know, you go to within a couple car lengths of that braking point, and you brake as hard as you can, and then hang on to a 10 pedal for maybe a little bit longer. So when you get to the apex, you're like, okay, you know, I can release a little bit sooner. So you just get to your braking point right away, and then you start on the release, and that's where kind of the speed comes. Is some other people might be intimidated by, you know, going to that reference and then starting there that way. So I think I like to just feel like I'm starting ahead of everyone because I've already done my homework more than anyone else. So, you know, it's just, you know, doing your homework is one, having confidence in your car control. So when you go over the limit, you can catch it. But, you know, and just being hungry, I guess, is another thing as well. But it's just, you know, for me, it's just what I do. It's not like, oh, you get up to speed so fast. It's like, no, it's just I do my homework and I go and do what I do, you know. And some people are like, oh, I hate you because you just say that. But, you know, it's like, for me, I'm having so much trouble with it. So, you know, in order to put it into words, you know, sometimes I have to think back further and harder, or what I do that maybe helps that. So, you know, for me, doing my homework, being confident in my car control, and then just working on the brake release rather than thinking about where you're braking. Because I might be braking a couple car lengths earlier than most people, but I'm starting my release phase much earlier than anyone else, and my minimum speed gets to where it is, and then it's condensing your brake zone.
Right.
You know, condensing the brake zone is actually the easiest part.
Yeah.
And in reality, you should start a little earlier so you can not be overdriving the entry and not have enough time to release the brake pedal, because the release is the most important part of any race car and on any racetrack. You know, if you're thinking about, I need to go to the 2-board, you know, you're already thinking 2 steps behind.
Right.
You need to be thinking about how it's halfway through the brake zone to the apex. You know, and where all that time is gained is from the middle of the brake zone to the apex. You know, if people are thinking about where they're braking, you know, it's kind of a moot point. But obviously you need a reference to where to start, so you can start a little conservative rather than starting like 2 boards back.
Right.
You know, but yeah.
Yeah, the magic happens in that brake release and how you, and I also say, I mean, you know, a lot of drivers who are, you know, they're going to the track a few times a year. I'd say most of them don't brake hard enough initially.
Yes.
You know, they've been taught smooth is fast.
Yeah.
So they squeeze on the pedal. And you know what? I'm all for smooth. Yeah. And I'm all for squeezing on a pedal, but you got to squeeze it really hard and ramp that pressure up as quick as you
Kick
can.
that pedal in the face, man.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can use the rest of the brake zone to manage your corner entry speed, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Obviously, you want it to be a very linear release, but you know that initial brake hit isn't going to be smooth. It's going to be a hard, aggressive hit.
Right.
And that's the only aggressive part of any car you're ever going to do is that initial brake hit. And obviously, you know, if you're braking into a corner where it's like a one pedal, you know, and it's right at turn, and obviously you're going to be very gentle with your brake application. But, you know, like if you're braking for a hairpin, hit that pedal. Yeah. Because that's where all that initial hit and all that inertia, how hard you can hit the brake pedal initially is where the car gets slowed down most efficiently, is in the first part of the brake zone. And if you're not slowing the car down very efficiently in the first part of the brake zone, you're not going to be able to slow down in the second half. Just because in downforce, you know, you're making most downforce, but even in a non-downforce car, you know, the inertia of the wheels and things, just the car getting pinned into the ground with that initial application, you know, you have more grip on the initial brake application in the first part of the brake zone. So that's why you attack that brake pedal as hard as you can right then and there, and then manage that release from there, because you start to lose that grip, that inertia, and the wheels start to lock easier. And
then you're not entering the corner with your hair on fire and thinking you're going to die right here on the spot, right? Yeah, yeah. It's way more comfortable that way. And, you know, and it's kind of that, you know, the old slow in, fast out kind of piece of advice that everybody gets when they first start road racing. And, you know, it's great advice, but, you know, I think the slow in part ends up being, for a lot of drivers, it's the, oh my God, I'm going in way too fast. So then they're hard on the brake at the very end of the brake zone, and then then they take off a bunch of speed, turn the car, and now they're having to re-accelerate it from such a low speed because they've overreacted. So, all fun stuff.
It's okay to have a later throttle application with a higher minimum speed.
Can you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, in my opinion, obviously to a point.
Yes.
But, you know, if you're getting on the gas pedal right after turning, you know, you've overslowed.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you're like at all these hairpins, you know, I'm not getting back to power until just after the apex, you know, and then not committed until halfway to the track out. Yeah. So obviously that has to do with power and whatnot, but you know, you shouldn't. In most tight corners, you know, you're not going to be back on the gas until the apex or just past it.
Yeah. So I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think that the slow in, fast out gets overdone.
Yes.
No, it is a great place to start.
Yeah.
You know, somebody's showing up and first time on the track, you know, don't worry about your rolling speed.
Yeah.
You know, get the car slowed down, get on the But I think that it gets overdone, and you're right. I mean, you know,
that's where all the time is.
Yeah. Would you rather start to accelerate from 50 miles an hour or from 52 miles an hour?
Yeah. Exactly.
I'd rather start accelerating from 52. So
you got it.
Yeah. I want to go back because, you know, I know people listen to podcasts, a lot of them do autocross, and you touched on something. You said first run 12 tenths. What is your approach to, like, let's say you have 3 runs, and I know, you know, I talked to some autocrossers and they're like, first run a little bit easy, second run overdrive it, third run tidy it up. Others are like, no, go balls out in the first one, you know, and then clean it up from there. I mean, do you kind of think about it that way, or do you just go and drive?
I just go and drive. Okay. To be honest, it's not like, oh, take it easy here, but it's like if you're taking it easy on the first run, you've already missed track time, you know, because you haven't figured out where the limit was. So for me, I just go out and at least think where I'm going to brake, and then maybe go a little past that. And then, you know, if I blow the apex, and it's like, okay, I need to bring it way back, you know. And then the second run is like, okay, maybe I brought it a little too far. And then the third one usually is the one where you cut the difference. And you go for it, but that's kind of something that's done automatically in my brain.
Right.
That I've kind of just trained it to do. You know, I go and overdrive, and you know, I might start with, you know, I hit the brake pedal and have too much brake pressure, and I turn in and I get understeer, you know, kind of thing, and I miss the apex. Like, okay, I need to start a little earlier and release a little earlier so the thing will turn.
Right.
But yeah, the autocross thing is just like, it's a pure mental exercise.
Right.
It's a pure mental exercise, and making sure yourself you get up to speed quickly and methodically, and just you understand everything.
And you touched on, with autocross, one of the things that's important is, you were talking about the homework, and you don't get a lot of chance to see the course.
Yeah.
But you visualize it. Do you spend a lot of time visualizing?
For me, it's like, as far as visualization, it's a mental visualization. It's not like I close my eyes and I like grab the virtual wheel or visual wheel in my hand. It's just notes in the back of my head.
Okay.
that I have.
Yeah.
And like maybe I'll close my eyes and think through the track, but not which is, I guess, visualization.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that is what it is. And one thing that I also have to do is say about the autocross, about autocrossing, is when my first ever autocross was like a majors tour, like a pretty, like a national event, down in San Diego, and Ron Bauer was a national champion in one of the, I think it was G Street or one of the, I forgot which one it was, but he was like a national autocross champion, and he's actually like developing the MX-5 with Mazda to get parts out for these guys. So
right.
He was at that one, and everyone was like, who's this Kenton kid? Like, he's never been here before, and he's just showing up, and they're like, he's a road racer, he's not going to do good. There's this big conception that road racers can't autocross, and autocrossers can't road race, and all these things, and it's a big stigma. And it's like the same thing with people in non-downforce cars. They're like, oh, you can't go to a downforce car, and people in downforce in sedans don't think people can come to non-downforce cars. And for me, it all goes back to the fundamentals. And if you can car control fundamentals, and if you can apply all the fundamentals, you're going to be fast in anything. Obviously, applying the fundamentals to its fullest extent, and having the car control to be able to apply those is going to put you ahead of the game in any platform of racing, period.
Right.
If you go drive on a dirt track, you'll be able to apply the fundamentals there as well. It's the same kind of thing. If you have the same thought process on vehicle dynamics, you might have to get the car, a dirt car, to rotate a slightly different way, but it's the same process of thinking through the corner.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's when I came in on my first run, I was like a second faster than Ron Bauer, and like was the fastest on course. They were like, who the frick is this kid? They're like, oh yeah, he won the Daytona 24 this year. They're like, oh, we didn't think he was gonna be all that good. I was like, well, I guess I was able to do pretty good, So yeah.
So you keep making yourself unpopular everywhere you go by winning and beating people. You should be more nice to people and let them win every now and then.
Ron beat me.
Yeah.
He got me by a tenth.
Okay.
Yeah, he got me. So once he figured everything out in the track, he was faster. He got me by a tenth. I almost had him though. Yeah, it was close.
But your point is, it's the fundamentals. It's the car control. It's the preparation. It's all that stuff. And yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the Rolex watch and going, you've won Daytona 24-hour race, and you're pretty damn quick on an autocross course. Doesn't get much more different than that, right?
Yeah. Big spread between road racing and autocross, that's for sure. For like second gear to sixth gear, flat out at 120 miles an hour or whatever, or in a corner. It's good stuff.
So what's next for you? Everywhere you keep moving up every year and doing different stuff, and where do you see yourself in the next few years?
It's always difficult to pinpoint exactly, because in a racer's life, it's always so, it's so you can't predict what's going to happen next. You can always have a vision, and for me, my vision is I obviously want to end up racing in the pinnacle of motorsports in North America, racing with a factory team, or a private team that wants to go and do big things. So for me, like, I guess the opportunities that I see, maybe I'll be going to Europe this year in the LMP3 cars, and maybe I'll have another shot at doing that next year. But the goal is to race in Europe. The goal is to race in the United States in GT cars, prototypes, really anything I can get my hands on.
Right.
If I have to jump into a midget on a dirt track, I'll do that too.
You're not too picky when it comes to what you'll drive.
If it's got 4 wheels and a motor, I'll drive it.
Yeah.
So I joke around. If you want me to race golf carts, I'll race golf carts. So
okay.
Yeah, but that's kind of my thought process. Is I want to drive anything and everything I can get my hands on.
Yeah. And everything that you want to drive it the best you possibly can. I gotta think that's the common theme that I see in you, and drivers like yourself. So
of course,
yeah. And how do people follow you? How do people follow you? What's your social media stuff? And
the Facebook page is KentonKochRacing.com. That's how you that's how it kind of looks like, but it's pronounced Cook, but it's spelled Koch. KentonKochRacing.com, and it is my website. And then the Twitter is the same thing, but without the G at the end, because they limited the characters. But, just you can Google it and you'll be able to find it there.
I appreciate you spending some time talking with me, because it's I've had huge respect from you from the moment I saw you. I think it was the very first time I saw you in a lights car. I think it was probably at Sebring, and I was like, this kid is either going to kill himself or he's going to win a lot of races. And I've never seen you crash. So you've obviously proven that you can do it. You're just fast, and it's been really fun. And this conversation about car control and the prep and that whole part of it, I think has been it's been fun for me.
Cool.
This afternoon we have another race.
Yeah.
And I know that you're chasing a championship. You've got one job, right?
Yep. Go win.
Go win every race you've got between now and the end of the year.
And not crash.
Yeah. No worries about that. So looking forward to watching you this afternoon. Hopefully my driver will be right there with you.
Yeah, we can only hope.
Yeah.
And I think Naj has been a great study, and it seems like he's picked up the pace pretty quick here, and it's been cool to see him improve this weekend dramatically too, to be quite close.
First time on a street circuit for him. Kind of second time ever in the rain yesterday morning in qualifying, so it was a big thing for him. So he's been really improving well. Talk about Naj Hussain, who's a driver I've been coaching for the last couple of years, and
Coach sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it wasn't for me, he would be way further ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but it's been fun, and I know that he's got massive respect for you. He looks in the mirror if you're behind him, and it's like you're the one guy on the track that he'll kind of go, I just got to let Kenton go, because I know I'm not going to stay in. He got out of the car, and he was happy with the way the race, kind of disappointed with the last lap kind of thing. Yeah. But he was like, man, Kenton's really good. So, anyways, good luck this afternoon, and thanks for spending time. Everybody follow Kenton, cheer for him, push for him.
I appreciate it, Ross.
Thanks.
I love the conversation Kenton and I just had about driving the limit. And of course, that leads to this week's Speed Secret. To consistently drive the limit, you have to be able to drive over the limit. Okay, I'm sure you heard what Kenton said about having to drive slightly over the limit to drive at the limit, but I want to emphasize that message. We're not talking about driving way over the limit. No, instead, just slightly beyond the limit. Kenton mentioned driving at 10 1/4 tenths, and I think that's a good goal. Maybe 10 1/2 tenths, but definitely not 11, 12, or beyond tenths. It's being okay with having the car slide just a little and not being on the perfect line every time because you overdrove just a little. And it's okay to do that. And again, we're not talking about spinning the car lap after lap, but to drive at 10 tenths, you have to be able to drive just beyond it and then dial it back a little. This may be easier to talk about than it is to do, but at least this gives you a target to aim for. I mentioned last week that I've launched a very cool program called the 30-Day Zone Challenge. It's many of the actionable tasks that a driver would get from one of my Inner Speed Secrets programs, the e-course, seminar, or one-on-one coaching, and all geared to help you get in the zone and perform at your best more often. Hey, you know how amazing it is when you're driving in the zone or in flow. With this program, I send you an email every day for 30 days straight with a specific task. If you do it, you will get into the zone more often. And the best thing is the program is free. It's kind of a way for me to test it out. All you need to do is go to speedsecrets.com/zone. So speedsecrets.com/zone to sign up. And then I'll start coaching you by email for 30 days straight. Hey, as always, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next week. Until then, keep learning and having fun.